May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Kook Audio Podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Kook Audio and Kook Archives, doing our best to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we've got a guest, Tom White. Tom and I were in college together at Austin College in Sherman, Texas in 1963 and the beginning of 64 when I dropped out. We talk about that a little. And he was a year ahead of me. We kept up with each other through the years, and he visited me at Tassajara, before the first practice period. We talk about that. And then he went into the Peace Corps, and he talks about that. And he lives up in Whidbey Island, not very far from Canada. And then we talked briefly about One Drop Zendo, which he's been involved with, which is Shodo Harada's place there. And Chisan Priscilla Sturat is involved there. And we talk about some other stuff. We talk about a very interesting guy named Ray Coffin. And we talk about his book, but we couldn't remember the name of the book. Wait a minute, I'll tell you what it is. Poetry for Crazy Cowboys and Zen Monks. Anyway, there's a listing for it in the old biography of Kook.com, which there's a new one which is a little more specific to books by and about Shunryu Suzuki and students. Books by students from Zen Center. But the old bibliography has a lot of stuff I just put up there. And but anyway, since we recorded this podcast 7 months ago, Tom has found his book and is going to scan it for us. And I will put it on Kook.com. Well, one thing I want to say about this podcast is... And we talk. I think I left it in. We talked about it a little at first. I was having trouble with losing the connection. Well, I didn't realize it was pretty obvious now. I think about it. That there was a USB port that had gone bad. All I had to do was change to another USB port. Anyway, the last 30 minutes or something of this talk with Tom was lost. But, as I remember thinking about it when it was over, I remember thinking, a lot of that stuff toward the end, it was just Tom and me going out about, maybe a lot of it should be cut. But there were a few things. One is that Tom, well, he had these rental car agencies, right? I mean, it was like right out of college. His father had either a Chevy dealership or something, or rental in McKinney, Texas. He says in the podcast, I think. Anyway, he got a car rental agency, and then after a while, he had 19 of them, and he had an airplane, and he was flying from one to another. Yeah, he said he got to be where he was bored flying and going from one to another. I never heard anybody say they got bored flying. And as I remember, he retired at about 29 or 30 and moved to a sailboat in the Bahamas. And he kept trying to get me to go there and visit him. He was there for years. And, he said, it was, the same place where like Jimmy Buffett was there. I think that's before he got clean and sober, if he ever did. And most people, maybe not most people, but lots of people do. Anyway, that's that's one of my regrets, is that I never joined Tom in the Bahamas. But I don't like being on boats that much. So, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't get out. Anyway, another thing I wanted to mention is, God, I wonder if we talked about this. He and his wife had a friend who they were in a theater. They were in a theater group together in where was he living? Just outside of Fort Worth, in a little town there. I'm from Fort Worth, Texas, and anyway, she had many multiple personalities. I guess you don't have to say many multiple. She had multiple personalities, and she had many of them. I mean, many, many, and they experienced it, and it was amazing. I can't remember the details. Thank God. I'll tell you what. I'll talk to Tom about that, and put it on a page for him on Cuke or something, because I don't think we'll get it in here. But we might. Maybe I'll get hold of him late tonight or tomorrow morning, and I'll wait. But she had certain, I can't remember, like a skin problem, but she had personalities that didn't have it. Some very, very different ones, and with different health issues. And it was quite extreme case. But in the theater, that didn't come out. She just would go on stage and do her thing. There's stutterers that are. Bruce Willis is a stutterer that don't have that problem if they're acting. Anyway, that's one really fascinating thing that I just remembered it. That I want to get something about that from Tom. I mean, to him and his wife, it was like no big deal. They were used to it, But, when they tell me about it, I go, wow. I've run into two people. I've been close to a couple of people who had two personalities, and they were very different, and one wasn't aware of the other. So I know that can happen. And in both cases, one of them was not nice. So anyway, that's all I can think of to say right now. Tom he's building a home on Whidbey Island. I guess he's 80. He was a year ahead of me in college, and I'm 79. He could still be 79. He could have gone to college earlier and be 78. Who knows? Because he looks awful young. The picture that I'm using for the cover for this podcast, he just took it with his iPhone to send it. And, he told me, well, he was out there digging today, getting the ground ready for something they're doing with the construction. That's not the only home he's built. He's been in real estate a lot, and they moved up to Whidbey many, many years ago. Anyway, that's enough. Anyway, I've really enjoyed knowing him, and it's been interesting to see his Buddhist path, and his just the way his life has progressed. So, look, as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, we'll give Tom a call. So, when you hear the bell, if you have such a mind, hit pause and meditate, or not. And when you're through meditating or not, we'll hit the bell to end the meditation, or not, and give Tom White a call.
Hello.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing real well, thank you.
Good. Yeah.
How about yourself?
Oh, good. Now that I've rebooted and we can talk, I'm happy that worked. I had trouble yesterday, incidentally. I did a 2-hour and 15-minute call with a very interesting fellow in New York City, and it was cutting in and out, and I don't know. Usually I don't have a problem, but sometimes I do, and I don't know. It's all a mystery. So you're in Whidbey Island.
We moved back, yep. We were there in Texas 6 years, and we were just, our son was getting serious, and he actually subsequently has gotten engaged, and he lives in Bellingham, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from here.
Yeah.
And so it was a reason to come back. We weren't really being that close with our family anyway, and we like it here. You know?
Yeah, Whidbey Island's great.
Here we
are. Have you connected with One Drop Zendo people?
Yeah, we have. So our close friends are from there, and I was just saw something about Shinsan on the. I don't know if you know anybody here with that, but we went. They're changing over the hospice care they have. Anyway, yes, I have met with some of the folks here, and we've had dinner with Jess and Simon, and yeah. So
I don't know if I know anybody from there. I mean, I knew people over 30 years ago, but I'm still in touch with Chisan, Perilous Durant.
Sure, yeah.
She comes there some, doesn't she?
Yes, she does, and actually, I think she was not feeling well for the most recent session. She was going to come, but I haven't really kept up with it because I just haven't sat in a long time. I sat when we first came. I went some, but as I've gotten older, it's getting harder and harder for me to sit. So haven't been doing it. And I have that other practice that I have done a lot of, and so
let's hear about it.
It's called Enlightenment Intensives. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Go on. It's called what?
Enlightenment Intensive.
Oh, Enlightenment Intensive. All right. I must know about it. Yes, and maybe I've heard of it, and maybe I've heard more of it, but right now I can't remember, so you have to remind me.
Yeah. Oh, that's all right. Yeah, it's basically set up so that you work with one other person for 40 minutes. You concentrate on a particular question, and you go back and forth in terms of contemplating and communicating. And you do that for about 11 hours a day, and meditate and stuff. And it's been the most profound, action for me. And so I did probably 150 days of that back in the late 80s and early 90s. So anyway, I've been sort of involved because I'm interested in Zen and interested in the group here and the people, and so I was involved with the construction committee and finance committee of doing that when we were setting up the One Drop here. Yusan was in a tent at the time, and they had purchased the land, and anyway, from there. We did lots of different things, and I was involved with that. They actually came over to our house. We rented a house with a big barn that had a apartment in it, and we sat there once a week for a while, back in the mid-'90s, I guess it was.
It's so neat.
Anyhow, yeah.
because those were the people I was with in Japan for 4 years.
Right.
So I just want to, it's, the One Drop Zendo was founded by Shodo Harada, who's the teacher, the Roshi at Sogenji in Okayama, Japan. And I lived there with Elin 88 to 2000. No, I mean 88 to 92.
Right.
Yeah, and that was great. Loved it.
Yeah. Good.
And and wrote a lot about it. And thank you and okay, but I didn't use the right names. I could have, because I didn't say anything bad about anybody, really.
Right.
But I changed all the names. Well, one of the neighbors was pretty mad at me. But actually, I actually got a letter saying what a wonderful neighbor she was and this and that. But, anyway, no big deal. So you and I met in 1963 at Austin College in Sherman, Texas.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep. And
I looked you up because I saw you out in the snow in your bare feet. And I wanted to talk to you. I think that's where we were in the dorm anyway. That sort of precipitated our involvement together, knowledge of each other, I guess.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
You were older. Yeah. You were I was a freshman, and I didn't even complete that year,
Right.
But
I was a year older. Yeah, just a year older.
And you were from Tyler, Texas.
Actually, I grew up in McKinney.
McKinney, McKinney just flashed before my eyes. But isn't it near Tyler?
No, McKinney's 30 miles south of Sherman, where Austin College was. I was in the car rental business for many years in the 70s and lived in Tyler, and that's what probably confused you.
Thinking of.
And that was one of the stories, that the night the guy fell asleep and ran into my car in front of your mother's house and totaled it.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
I'd forgotten about that. Oh my
God. I
don't
know if you know the rest of it.
Yeah,
and I don't know if you want to talk about this. But the rest of it is, I was in the rental car business, so I ended up getting a car from another rental company to take back to Tyler, and I drove it back through a little town in East Texas on the way home, and I got pulled over by the FBI. And some guy had held up a bank there in Chandler, Texas, and he had a green car, and I was in a green car.
My gosh.
I got pulled over, and I was there about 15 minutes, and it was all straightened out.
Oh, that is cool. Yeah. I got arrested, so to speak, in my front yard the year before Mother died. I was there. Let me think. So she died in 2013 at 98 and a half.
Right.
And I was, I would walk to the Starbucks at night sometimes, which is about a mile. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, and it's
walk.
Through neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah, beautiful neighborhood.
A beautiful walk through woods, and I was coming back, and I had my I went there and worked. I just to get out. I worked at home. I worked there. I was just hanging out with Mother because she was getting very old, as as I entered our lawn, there in the sidewalk there, a police car came up, and they wanted to talk to me, and them, so the police were out there talking to me, and then the neighbors, several neighbors, were standing out watching, seeing what was happening, and Mother was on the front porch, and then I got in the police car, and we drove off. And she didn't, and I really think she said, she called out and said, I think he's innocent or something like that. Really. And so they just drove me down the street at Harlanwood and had a guy look at me. And he said, no, that's not him. Some guy had robbed a house, but the description was nothing like me. Really. But so the police drove me back, and I said, well, thank you. It was fun. I enjoyed it, man.
Good thing you weren't black, huh?
Well, there wasn't a black guy, but I think it might have been Hispanic.
Yeah.
But he actually got into a fight with the guy. He'd broken into his house just down the street.
Oh, my God.
And then run off. But anyway, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so you were spending the night there, and somebody just ran into the car.
A young man he was going or had coming from practicing the organ for the Christmas thing at a big church, and he fell asleep and ran right over into the back of my car, which was parked in front of your house.
Oh gosh. Well, that is fine. I do remember that now that you remind me. Yeah. Well, that was good. And we got, we kept up with each other, after they'd, well, actually, John Jackson and I left, but they told me I could never come back. And we were on
the Sogenji area.
No. This is Austin College.
Austin College. Okay, yeah.
And we were on dorm restriction. There had been a trial, and we were convicted of. You know what it was? We hadn't gone, neither John nor I had gone home for spring break. So everything was empty. And you remember Charles Scurry?
Yeah.
Was the wing, the wing dick or whatever.
Yeah.
He was the authority. And John and I had, there was a very long hallway in the dorm, like 50 yards or something.
Yep.
You go one end to the other. And John and I had a ping pong ball and ping pong paddles, and we're hitting it from one end to the other. And Scurry told us to stop. John said, "Fuck you, Scurry. What? We're out here, and we're not bothering you at all." Anyway, he turned us in for it. And, they were really down on us because we were troublemakers to begin with. And Mom and Pop, I think their name was Evans, who were like the elderly married couple who were in charge of our dormitory. They and the guy who was like head of it, who was higher up, like a senior or something, were we were tried. And I said, well, wait a minute, what are we being tried for? And I made them agree that we were being tried for hitting a ping pong ball from one end to the other and bothering Charles Scurry. And we were found guilty and put under dorm arrest. that we couldn't leave the dorm except to go to classes
For
when
classes.
school came back, right? And so we thought, well, we've been here long enough. It's not working, So,
Yep.
so then we were walking out, and I know the guy who was like head of the dorm, he found us and he just started screaming, what are you doing here? You have to be. He said, well, actually, we quit. We're leaving. Oh, and it so upset him. And, yeah. And John's father, he and I hitchhiked down there, and his father but John said his father had never been away from his mother, but his father said he would sleep in a motel if I was coming to their home. John had been staying with me for like a week or something in Fort Worth.
Blamed you, huh?
And so I said, well, John was on the payphone. I said, John, you go home. I'll just hitchhike from here. I hitchhiked to New Orleans. And then I got robbed hitchhiking. Anyway, it's a long story. It goes on.
And then you ended up in Mississippi, didn't you?
Yeah. I went to Mississippi and, got involved with the group there that was getting ready for the long, hot summer voter registration and all that.
Right.
They made me a spy because I was a white Southerner who could talk to local people, and they saw I didn't have any trouble talking to local people. And that was frightening. Anyway, I've written all about it. You can read all this stuff, all of it, on Cuke.com if you go to Freedom Songs. It's a 12-part series.
Okay. All right, good.
Anyway, that's I'm going to cease there, remembering all that. So, you came and visited me at Zen Center in '67, right?
7. That's correct. At Tassajara.
You came into Tassajara?
Yeah, you want to hear the story?
Yeah, I was there. All right. Yeah.
You tell me what you want. I remember it clearly.
Yeah, I want to hear it. Describe every pebble.
Well, Greta and I I'd communicated with you about going to the Peace Corps, and this is in June or July, and we said, well, we're going to come through San Francisco. Maybe stop a night or two and see you. And you said, sure, come on. And so we did, and we got out of the airplane, got a bus into town, and started walking around looking for you. And we finally found where your apartment was. It was an upstairs apartment in an attic, I think, somewhere over there toward Haight, or on off Market or somewhere. I don't remember. And we got up there, and there were some people in there. Wasn't you? And they didn't want to answer the door because they were afraid we were cops or something. They didn't know us. But finally, they told us you were at Tassajara. And somehow we got hooked up from there with Jerry was there, and he let us sleep on a mattress on the floor.
Jerry Ray.
Yeah, Jerry Ray. And we did, and somehow we got in touch with you, and we took, I think that's when we took a bus down to Raytown. It's a famous art and wealthy person town on the road that goes back up into Tassajara. It was right on the coast there.
You mean Carmel Valley?
Carmel. Yeah, Carmel.
Yeah,
it was Carmel. And you came in from Tassajara in an old Volvo Roundback and picked us up.
Oh,
at Carmel. And that's when, and then took us back out to Tassajara, and you scared the shit out of us. Excuse my French, because you drank a big old cup of coffee and you were just wired, and you drove that Volvo up that road. You had us holding on. But on the way up, we stopped at, is it Jamestown?
Jamesburg.
where the Jamesburg, yeah, and you knew the folks there, and you're always, got along with everybody real well, and knew them, and they invited us in, and we walked in, and there was the father and a couple of his boys and a couple of other ladies, and they're all sitting around a table. One of them had a broken arm and a cast, and he had a rifle on the table. And we came in and we started shooting the breeze, and then somehow I ended up arm wrestling with him. I don't remember which one. It was the father, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like Bill Lambert. That's something Bill Lambert would do.
And, then neither one of us won. So he was sort of impressed, and he liked you guys. He said, "Yeah, I like you Buddhist guys."
That's Lambert. So I picked you up in Tim Buckley's Volvo. Actually, it wasn't mine, but I used it a lot. Incidentally, the place you described was a place I had lived at long before.
Really?
If it was June of '67, I had been living at Tassajara since March. But before that, I was staying with Loring Palmer on Buchanan Street in Japantown in San Francisco. Now, maybe that's where you went.
God knows, I have no idea.
And I had been involved with and living near the Zen Center since the prior, like September, October, say.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So, and Jerry, I remember where Jerry lived. He was around for a while. That's neat. So I picked you up and I took you in back and you met Lambert and all those people. Oh, that's cool. Go on.
I just remember, basically we were there for, I don't know, a couple of nights maybe. And I helped work on the redo of the kitchen and the dining room. It was torn almost totally apart at the time. And we were working on, I remember the ceiling was pulled out and everything. And so I did that for one day. You got us to be able to be there as work guests as opposed to paying guests.
Oh, yeah.
We were broke anyway, and so we both worked on that project and for a day or two, and then we met the Roshi and bowed and said hello, and we met the bread guy. What's his
Ed
name?
Brown.
His famous Ed Brown. Yeah.
The kitchen was just a very small shack over on the side because the main kitchen had been taken down, and what had been the employees' dining area had to be turned into a kitchen. It was actually an accident that the first caretaker there that we'd sent down, the Zen Center had sent down. He knew the kitchen was condemned, so he thought he'd do everybody a favor and just tear it down. And, of course, condemning it doesn't mean we couldn't use it. We could have used it until we had a new kitchen. But so that sort of expedited building a new kitchen. Anyway, sounds like we were working in the dining room, the old bar area, getting it ready to make it into a Zendo, which would put it in May of '67.
I think you had a Zendo you were using when we were there. We didn't sit. It was a brick building.
We were using what became the dining room as a Zendo.
Okay.
And then the first practice period started July 4th. And I think we had a ceremony there on the 3rd. So we had to have the Zendo ready, I think, on the 3rd. And it really wasn't ready until that morning. They were working till late into the night getting the partitions and the tatamis and everything. So anyway, you were in on some part of that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then we boogied out. I don't remember who, if you took us or somebody else took us, or we rode with somebody. We did make one trip down to the on the river during one day we were there. You took us down swimming and down. There was a sort of a slide there, one little small waterfall.
Right.
And we were swimming
the Narrows.
There. The Narrows, that's what it was, yeah. And then I think the next day we went on back and headed for Hawaii, where we were in Peace Corps training.
I remember you talking about Peace Corps. Tell me about that Peace Corps. How was that?
Yeah, that was really fine for us. We were teachers' assistants in the southern Philippines, down in the southern Mindanao. And we had a little apartment there, small, just a little concrete block house kind of apartment that the teachers had built. And there were 3 or 4 volunteers in the town, and there were lots of good Filipino friends, and it was really good experience. I ended up the last year we were there. We ran into lots of people, travelers and other people, and there was this guy from England who had been living as a book writer of special travel books and lived in China for a long time, and he ended up talking with this guy we called the Green Cocoon, who was mooching off everybody, and he ended up telling us about this guy, and he had heard rumors of the Tassajara, which were supposedly at one time thought to be the only Stone Age left in the world, and we're off in southern Mindanao near Lake Cebu. And so we got together with the Green Cocoon and somebody else and a friend of mine, and we took a bus and a Jeep, half track up to Lake Cebu, which is now a big resort area. And anyway, and then we found some guides at this, there was a Catholic mission there, and we found some guides that would take us into the hills. And so we went up into about 2 days walk into the mountains, and ended up staying a couple of 3 days with some folks who were slash and burn hunters, gatherers, slash and corn raisers on slash and burn. And we talked to them and stayed with them, and we gave them food, and they gave us food, and we stayed there, I think, 2 nights. But they said they'd never seen anybody like that. So we ended up going back home, and that was the end of that little story. And then later, friend Ray Coffin and I, we got together with some other folks, and we climbed up Mount Apo, which is the tallest mountain in the Philippines down there, about 10,000 feet, but from sea level. And that was a good experience. And then it was great to learn to speak Cebuano and get to know a different culture. And it was, the Peace Corps in those days was huge. I mean, pretty big. And it was it was good relation. It was mainly a good relations thing, teaching Americans about other people, teaching other people about us, that kind of thing. And it was a great experience.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But Ray Coffin, you were with Ray Coffin there. Oh, now he was
Rinzai.
Yeah, he'd studied Rinzai Zen in Japan, and I knew I had met him through you in Austin, and I think it was Austin, and but I didn't know him. I just met him to say hello once. I don't even remember it. I just remember that happened. And I've got his book.
Yeah.
I guess you gave it to me or something. I might have even.
I may have.
I might have even got it on Cuke.com. uh, because he was a real character, and he was involved with like Daitokuji or something like that in Kyoto.
He was in Daitokuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Early on, like
60. Well, when we left, 69. He left the same time we did, and he went to Japan. Well, he left a year early in 68, and went a year early, and then we visited him on the way back from the Philippines. Actually, we didn't visit him. We visited with some friends he had that he gave us their information, and we ended up meeting him back in Texas. He lived with me in Austin for about 6 months when I moved back to Austin in 74. Anyway, but he had a hard time. He told us lots of stories about his experience at Daitokuji, and there was a lot of jealousy by the Japanese students, and they would jump on him and do all kinds of stuff, and which I don't know if it's not in books or anything, but he.
I can believe that. Rough. I don't have any trouble believing that.
Yeah. He became one of the Roshi's helpers, like the special job, and there was a lot of jealousy about that. And then he was a lot like some of us. He was pretty rebellious, and he would go out and do stuff that other people wouldn't do. Go out in bars at night and stuff, and sneak
he'd climb
back
over
the
wall.
fence.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know if he actually had to climb a wall, but that's the way they'd say it.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of his book?
I did. I thought I'm looking right here and I don't see it. I have a few. I've saved just a few shelves of books for all this moving, and I can't remember what it even was called. It was a poetry book, wasn't it?
No, it might have had poetry in it.
I can't imagine I did.
I've got
rid of it yet.
I'm going to look into this because I had the book. I think I had it listed in the bibliography. It was sort of outrageous. But anyway, I'll just look. I can't do that now. But
sure,
as I remember in Austin, he got involved shooting speed.
Yeah, Ray was really into, he started barkeeping. When he first came back, he did deliveries for somebody real early kind of thing. He had a pickup truck and he did deliveries, and then something happened and he ended up doing barkeeping, and he started running around with a bunch of people at the bar and stuff, and he started doing speed. And he said, when I saw this friend of mine who was one of the bartenders who he got what do you call the stuff that the gay guys got?
AIDS. He got AIDS. That's right.
He got AIDS, right? And but he lived for several years after that, and he moved to Houston, and he worked at the what's the name of that famous artist museum down there that does the big color things. My mind is gone. I can't think of it right now. Yeah. Anyway, so and he actually came up for like a month, and he helped me build my house at the farm. So I bought a farm in Texas, near Corsicana, where my folks lived, and back in whenever it was, 84, after I came back from sailing, and he came up and we built a little 1,200 square foot house there on the farm.
Wow.
And yeah, and
Wow.
you know, it's all hand done by the two of us. And then my little brother came and helped. Anyway, Ray was there for a while, and then he went back to Houston and started getting sick.
Oh.
After that, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And
Well,
he had a girlfriend who helped him a lot through all of that. First he got shingles, and then he got the other bad stuff with the AIDS. And so anyway,
yeah,
Ray was a great guy.
Yeah,
great guy, really a big-hearted man. Big-hearted man.
There were a few Texans in Japan studying that are really forgotten. He's forgotten. I mean, he was there, but there's one guy I talked to who had gotten transmission and got a temple. And
really?
I remember talking to him when I was there, like on the phone. And I can't remember anything about it now. But there were obscure Americans involved in early Zen and Buddhist stuff in Japan, just a handful here and there, and in China, going back, and you can go way back. Lafcadio O'Hearn in Japan, turn of the century, 100 I think he was in Japan like around 1895 or something, and he became a very important writer about Japan, and he'd been a journalist from New Orleans, and he lived in Yaizu, where Shunryu Suzuki came from.
Okay.
Just a little fishing town. Anyway, all that, it's really interesting to me, and a lot of it I'd hear before I started writing everything down and collecting everything. And it's just sort of, a lot of that is just sort of, it's there in the past fading away, as we will.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, today's we post a lecture excerpt from Suzuki 6 days a week, and I was doing it for years and years. But my sort of partner in Cuke.com, Peter Ford, he's been doing it and putting up a picture. And today's is pretty cool. It has. It relates to just what we're talking about right now. Let me see. Here, I'll get it. All right. Here it is. This is today's quote. It is necessary to vanish. If you don't, you're a ghost. And then he laughs. You're a ghost in your delusion. Something that exists should vanish, Is there anything which doesn't vanish? Is there anything which never vanishes? Right there, I was just talking to Katrinka about his his use of the word should. He says something that exists should vanish. And I've talked to Peter Schneider about this. Peter was at Tassajara when you were there. He was like the director.
Peter, I remember a Peter, yeah.
Yeah, there you are. And he's got a Zen group, he and his wife in Northridge in L.A. And they were in Japan like 20 years. And excellent Japanese. And he published little books in Japanese and English, for studying English and studying Japanese. And one thing I talked to him about once was Suzuki's use of the word should, because the words that people really didn't want to hear from him were should and shame. And they don't really mean the same thing. You know, Americans are so worried about shame and guilt and all that. Shame, the way he used it, was actually more like modesty, I think. But, you know, a sense of not pushing yourself on something. It's like when they were talking about swimming, being naked at the baths, well, he said, don't you have any shame? Of course, everybody freaks out when he says that. But what he meant was that more like modest. Don't you have any modesty? And right here he says, all right, I'm doing this on my iPhone. He says, something that exists should vanish. He doesn't mean should.
That's like, it's almost like a priori. It's almost like
will.
It's
something
it
that
will.
exists. You know, the nature of its existence is that it will vanish. Anyway,
right.
It's funny to see that, because I was just thinking about calling Peter up and trying to nail it down, because I'm a little vague. I mean, there's different uses of the word should, and I sort of know what he's thinking, the Japanese word, maybe that would be like must. The Japanese word that I think that would tend to translate to should, it can also mean must. So something that exists must vanish or will vanish. Anyway, that just occurred to me there. Well, thanks a lot, Tom White. That was great. I really enjoyed talking with you. I enjoyed talking with you this morning, which is your tonight, which is your last night for me. And I look forward to relating to you in the future, you know, for the next coming decades. So this has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanuru with Dogette Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.